Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to another edition of Retro Video Game Reviews, where I play crappy old games so you don't have to. For this week's show, it's time to dust off that old Sega Genesis and take a look at another classic. So who's with me? Anyone? Anyone? Hello? Well, I guess it would help if anyone I knew still had a Sega Genesis. Also, not having any friends might be part of the problem. Oh well. Now I've got a big surprise for you on this week's show. So let's set the Wayback Machine for the early 1990s. The year was 1993. 8 years of economic prosperity under Bill Clinton were about to begin. The #1 selling pop single was Whoomp There It Is by Tag Team. Wayne's World 2 was a smash hit in theaters. And kids played with silly string and Nerf footballs instead of sitting around instant messaging each other and getting fat like they do today. But more important than all this was the release of the monumental achievement in video game excellence, WWF Royal Rumble. Royal Rumble was released for both the Sega Genesis and Super Nintendo consoles, but I'm going to take a look at the Sega Genesis version because I think it's a better game, mainly because I like the cast of characters more. The startup screen introduces this game by way of possibly the greatest video game theme music of all time. You know, sometime I'd like to hold a dance party where we all do the limbo while the Royal Rumble theme song plays in the background. Hey, if I ever actually get into a nightclub, I'm so requesting this song. I'm sure the place will be hopping in no time. Anyway, the startup screen also introduces us immediately to the many different match types this game has to offer. You can do a simple one-on-one match, which is exactly what it sounds like, a basic one-on-one wrestling match. There's also a tag team match, a six-man tag team match, a brawl, which is basically just a no-holds-barred slugfest. There's tournament mode, where you wrestle a series of one-on-one matches to become the champion. And then there's my favorite match type, the Royal Rumble itself. But we'll get to that later. After deciding the match type, you can then select your character. And man, does this game have some beauties. We've got the Macho Man Randy Savage, Bret the Hitman Hart, the immortal Hulk Hogan himself, of course, the Undertaker, who's like this undead zombie guy, Crush, who's some Hawaiian guy, Hacksaw Jim Duggan, who just kind of looks like an idiot, the narcissist Lex Luger, the Heartbreak Kid Shawn Michaels, the model Rick Martel, Papa Shango, who's a voodoo master from parts unknown. After all, what would wrestling be without the token parts unknown guy? There's also a Cuban-American gangster named Razor Ramon, and a government tax official named IRS. Oh, by the way, in case you're wondering, the letters in his name stand for Erwin R. Shyster. Isn't that incredibly clever? Who says that wrestling is a dumbed-down form of entertainment? Somebody took a good 10 seconds to come up with that name, you know. And if you're at the character select screen long enough, it will start to play the entrance music of whatever wrestler you happen to be on at the time. Let's hear the 16-bit version of Hulk Hogan's theme song, Real American. God, you know, I could play this game for hours just to listen to this song. Come to think of it, I might request this song at the nightclub too. I picked the Hulkster himself, and I decided to go up against that Papa Shango guy just to see if he'd really try to cast some spell on me. But one of the problems with this game that jumps out right away is that all the characters fight the same. They all have the exact same body types too. Some so-called elite gamers might say that I'm being too harsh, considering the time period in which the game was released. But there were other wrestling games in 1993 that had far more to offer in terms of character presentation, like Saturday Night Slam Masters for the Super Nintendo. I mean, take a look at these statistics here. According to the game, The Undertaker is 6 feet 10 inches tall and Shawn Michaels is only 6'1". And yet when you play these guys in the game, they're the exact same height. Not only that, but Shawn Michaels appears to have the exact same physique, even though there's a weight difference of almost 100 pounds. So again, the graphics are no great shakes, and the one-on-one match is pretty standard. But if you're adventurous like me, you're probably anxious to try out these other match types. The brawl match is pretty entertaining because you basically just beat the crap out of the other guy until he runs out of energy. Since there's no referee, there's no pinfalls or countouts, and therefore no rules either. The best part is when you can go outside the ring, grab the conveniently placed steel chair at ringside, and hit your opponent with it. Another great match type is a tag team match, of course. It would have been awesome if this game had some legendary tag team in it, such as the Legion of Doom or the Nasty Boys. But sadly, neither of them can be found, so you have to make up your own tag teams. And I also like the grappling system in this game. If you engage your opponent in a grapple, that little bubble that appears over the wrestlers shows who has the strength advantage. So it becomes sort of a tug-of-war between you and the game. You have to basically just mash buttons as fast as possible, and certain combinations pull off certain moves. You know, one of my favorite things about wrestling is the names of the moves. Now, I don't know who came up with the word suplex, but that is a really, really cool word. I also like how they call a move an atomic drop, when it's really nothing more than one wrestler lifting his opponent up and dropping him ass first on his knee. In case you're wondering, every wrestler pretty much has the exact same set of basic maneuvers. But what's really awesome about this game is that each wrestler does have their own finishing move. It's a pretty neat feeling when you pull off a finishing move too. Kind of like doing a fatality in Mortal Kombat, except without all the blood. Some finishers are pretty cool, like The Undertaker's Tombstone Piledriver. Some are really lame, like Hulk Hogan. All he does is drop his leg on his opponent. Now maybe it's just me, but I find it awfully hard to believe that dropping a leg over your opponent would do enough damage to keep him down for exactly 3 seconds. I mean, how is this doing any more damage than just a regular elbow drop? But the game never bothers to explain that. And without a doubt, Crush does the coolest finisher in the game, the Cranium Crunch. He basically just grabs the dude's head from behind and squeezes it as hard as he can. Kind of like how Jason killed that one guy in Friday the 13th Part 3.